appeared on Third Rock. I don't know if you saw those episodes.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, and I just felt that it was harmony. It was almost having Jekyll and Hyde together in the one set.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Well, I was on one of those episodes, and I got to do a scene with John Cleese. And honestly, if I had to share one particular highlight for me being on set on Third Rock from the Sun, it was working with John Cleese, because I was a huge fan when I was growing up. I was a huge fan of Monty Python's Flying Circus. I'd seen all the episodes, seen all the movies. I'd seen probably every episode of Faulty Towers, and I even had when I went off to college, on my dorm on my wall, I had a poster of the Ministry of Silly Walks from Monty Python. So it was John Cleese doing his silly walk. So I was waking up in my dorm room every day, and John Cleese was there on my wall. I didn't share that with him when I worked with him, and I didn't. I tried, I wanted to play it cool. I didn't play it like I was an immense fan of his, because I didn't want to, embarrass. He's British, so I just wanted to play it cool. But I was, in fact, a huge fan of his, and he did not disappoint. He was so delightful to work with. And I remember when we did. Yeah.
No, continue. Please continue.
Well, no, I just he was so enthusiastic to be there. And I remember us sitting around and doing the table read on the first day, and John Cleese was sitting across from me, and I just saw him there with this huge manic grin staring across from me. And then we did our scene, and in rehearsal, and then we were walking to the cafeteria at lunchtime, and he said, "Oh, you're very funny." And that was enough. I was just on a high for about 2 weeks after that moment. It was really praise from Caesar for me.
And I suppose, yeah, Ian, I suppose to get on a real comedy show that span over 6 seasons, it's a delight for any actor. But to do that with your father as well, in terms of having that family sort of bond, that sort of family unity. And I know yourself and your father have worked on special guest episodes since, but that was probably the first time we got to see father and son. And people until this day, unless they did their research and researched the characters, they wouldn't have made that connection between yourself and Leon and John Lithgow in terms of characters, that if they were going by the TV show, unless they dug a bit deeper into the background and the cast of Third Rock from the Sun. And it definitely doesn't you don't really see that. It almost feels like there's the relationship on set, there's a lack of disrespect more than respect shared between the characters.
The disrespect is palpable for our dynamic on the show. It was, I mean, we tolerated each other. My father and I have never really seen eye to eye on a lot of things, but we sort of got off on the wrong foot working on Third Rock, because he had shown me the script for the original pilot, and that was, at the time, it was called Life as We Know It. Okay. And it was very different, and he had responded to it, and he was committing to doing this. And I was either still in college at the time, or I had just graduated from college. He gave me the script, and I didn't really get it, and I don't remember exactly why I found fault with it, but it just didn't really strike me as very funny. So and I think he was very self-conscious at the time about making this choice, because at the time he had had a movie career, theater career, and he was committing to doing this network TV show. And the pilot was shot, and then I got cast on the pilot. I was visiting LA at the time, and they happened to be holding auditions for Life as We Know It. And I went in, there was a callback, and next thing I know, I'm Leon on Third Rock from the Sun. And Life as We Know It was a little bit different. They shot a pilot that never aired.
Okay.
So Shannon Holt was on the pilot. Jane Curtin and Simbi Callie were not. So
Okay.
those were new characters that they wrote into the redone pilot. And yeah, the network didn't really care for the pilot, but they wanted it to be reshot. So it was reshot. They added those new characters. They called it Third Rock from the Sun. We did the new pilot, and the pilot was better. I still didn't think it was that great. I thought the show got much better as it went along. I think they all kind of found their footing with it. But there was always that little bit of tension because my father knew that I was not terribly enthusiastic about this project, and I thought he was sort of crazy for doing this. But he clearly saw the potential it had.
Yeah. And I suppose, Ian, in terms of your role as Leon, as a sort of class student, in terms of the thinking of the producers, in terms of getting that those sorts of classmates, we see David DeLuise as Bogue,
Yeah.
Danielle as Karen, Chris Hogan as Aubrey. They were the sort of characters that are around you for most of your scenes in Third Rock
Mm-hmm.
from the Sun. That sort of classroom environment, how did that sort of come about, and what was the producers and directors sort of vision with that in terms of taking it forward? Was it always going to be seen that Karen was this one of reason, the one of sense, and you were just the three basically goofballs beside her, basically?
Yeah, that was basically it. We were the four recurring characters in the classroom at Pendleton University, and we never left. They did it for 6 seasons, and we were still in that classroom. So they never really explained why we were taking the same physics class for 6 years and never graduated, but no one really questioned it, I guess. So yeah.
And I suppose, Ian, in terms of the one-liners and the puns that we see from Third Rock from the Sun, and there's always the sort of the chaos and the frenzy that really in this comedy show, that every minute something sort of was happening, sort of 100 miles per hour. It almost feels like that you're going on a roller coaster when you're watching an episode from the Third Rock from the Sun, because everything
Uh-huh.
was in a frenzy. Every actor, every sort of scene was in a frenzy. It almost felt like something could topple over and explode at any given minute.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. I think that was the quality of it.
Mm.
It just yeah, it seemed to work.
Yeah. And I suppose, Ian, one of the real dynamics, and I thought was a real sort of good take from the Third Rock from the Sun, was the character played by Wayne Knight, Don Orville.
Yeah.
The chemistry and the laughter between him and Kirsten Johnston, who played Sally Sonneman, and the sort of the two opposites in terms of putting these two characters together. Possibly it would be look something, if you saw it out in real life, you would say that was something of a circus sort of act, and that's the way it sort of looked on, that you couldn't see, here's this stunning woman, this stunning actress with this overweight sort of, dare I say, coward that basically is, dare I say, not the common look that you would find of any sort of police officer. But that's what made it sort of funny, really, in terms of that. And there were so many scenes that you almost were hoping and sort of pleading that Don would come. You're always triumphing. You're always hoping to see the best, really, for that Don character.
Yeah. Well, Wayne Knight was so brilliant. He came on, he'd been on a couple of episodes of the first season, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, it was second season where they decided to make him a regular on the show. And yeah, and he and Kristen were just so brilliant together. And as you say, just the physical uh, contradiction of them. You had Kristen Johnson, who's this Amazon with this big personality. I think she was my height. She was 6'1",
Mm.
and then she's uh, has this passion for Don and his and the power he wields as a a street cop, basically. Yeah,
And
they were
I
very
suppose,
funny together.
yeah, and I suppose, Ian, after maybe 3 seasons in, you were reaching the height of popularity in terms of Third Rock from the Sun. It was really beginning to take off at that sort of stage. Did your obviously your role obviously began to sort of increase? Was it nearly going to the stage then of, I know you're a recurring actor, but nearly towards full commitment? Were you able to do anything at that time aside from Third Rock from the Sun, or given that sort of involvement where it's probably 22 episodes a season and you're a recurring actor, you might be acquired for maybe 10, 12 of those 22 episodes? Was a real full-on gig from maybe season 3 onwards?
Um, was from season 3 onwards. Well, they used the students a little bit less, and um, that was in part due because they were introducing new characters like Don. So every episode they only have, I don't know what it is, 22, 23 minutes
Mm.
of content, and then the rest of the half hours is the commercials. So they have to be able to accommodate all the characters within that small period of time. So the students, we were still on, every half a dozen episodes or so, they bring the students back. It wasn't quite as frequent as early on, which I, grumbled about a little bit at the time, but I was still very grateful to have have a paid gig that was, that did offer some flexibility because I would have time off between episodes, and being on a show that had that degree of popularity wasn't something I ever took for granted. It was really, it paid my rent all through my 20s, so it's nothing to sneeze at.
And I suppose, Ian, in terms of Third Rock from the Sun, at the time did it open a good lot of opportunities for you in terms of getting your name and obviously getting your own, standing on your own 2 feet as an actor? In terms of that, did it open up many sorts of doors and opportunities in the in the aftermath, or even in the height of its popularity for you in terms of other working opportunities as an actor?
Well, it took a while, really. I didn't have a lot of success while I was in Los Angeles. I ended up leaving LA because I just got kind of tired of the routine and the grind of being an actor in LA. Um, and I ended up back in New York, my hometown. I made a few stops along the way. Um, and I had great experiences doing regional theater in places like Philadelphia and Chicago and Buffalo. And though I really appreciated those experiences because I had always been in a big pond. So being in a smaller pond and being in smaller communities of actors was an experience that just helped me remember why I loved acting, and made me feel like it was a fulfilling part of my life. Whereas in LA, it's easy to become jaded. There's just the ratio between auditions to gigs is so great. Even if you do have exposure and you have a regular gig on TV and people know who you are, um, for most of the population of actors in LA, your job is auditioning. And I got a little tired of that. I got a little tired of auditioning. I actually, when COVID hit a few years ago, I felt like I adjusted to that fairly well. And fortunately, I have my health, and my family's okay. But it totally changed the industry because now there are no auditions. So anything that you're submitted for as an actor, it's DIY. You just get your backdrop and your ring light, and you film your own audition and send it in. And there's people who really miss in-person auditions, and those are the extroverts. They need to be around people. They need to be in the rooms with casting associates. I don't. I don't really miss that. I'm perfectly content just to do my own thing and do 30 takes until I'm satisfied with what I got, and then I send it in, and all in the comfort of my living room.
And I
So,
suppose, yeah. And I suppose, Ian, in terms of, we spoke about people, and obviously we know Joseph Gordon-Levitt went on to great fame, but the
yeah,
character who played David DeLuise, who played Bug, himself and his brother Peter have gone on to be
yeah,
massive film producers and directors in terms of producing hit TV series, hit movies as well. And did you always
uh-huh.
see that with David, that sort of creative eye and detail? Does it surprise you that he's been such a success behind the camera as well?
Not really. David was always very enthusiastic and curious, and a big personality. He's the son of Dom DeLuise, as you may know. So we had we had kind of a common bond with that, having celebrated fathers and kind of growing up in the industry. And yeah, no, he went on and he was on the Wizards show, right? The Wizards of Waverly Place.
Yeah, and he appeared
Yeah,
instead. He's associated with the famous Stargate TV series as well, with Richard Dean Anderson as
Stargate.
well.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
was that David or Peter? It
both
was
of
one
them
of them.
appeared in it. Both of them
Both
appeared in
both
it.
of them appeared in it.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah, it's been
yeah,
so long.
yeah.
Yeah.
And Ian, in terms of comedy, in terms of that genre, is it one of your favorite sorts of genres? Is it a genre you liked? Is it a genre that has been particularly associated with you throughout your career? I know it's a genre that your father loves, and he's made a name for himself in terms of that genre, comedy. But is it a genre you're particularly have a liking to as well?
Oh, absolutely. It's always relief to me when I get a job where I get to just be a cut up and be funny. That's yeah. Anytime I have to play like a lawyer or a businessman, I tend to stress about that for a while because it's more natural for me to just make it silly.
Mm,
Always has been, yeah.
yeah. And you mentioned there about you, Third Rock from the Sun at the earlier season, not really getting the concept of it taking off or seeing the sort of humor. But were you sort of taken back after one or two sorts of seasons to see how the fans really took onto it and the fans took it on board, and to see the sort of the following it began to get midway after season 3 or 4 did, and obviously it almost got a cult-like following in terms of that. Did that sort of shock you in terms of the audience appeal and how far it sort of spread? Because it can be seen all over the world these days in so many different territories and so many sorts of networks.
Mhm.
And did it shock you that it went global, that it went outside the United States?
Did it shock me? I don't know. I certainly was aware of its popularity pretty early on. It had a loyal following, it seemed, because the the network kept moving it around. It had like 10 different time slots. And uh, my understanding is when that happens, usually the audience just kind of gets impatient with following the show around.
Mm.
But it still had a loyal following. Um, I remember there was one year they had a T-shirt made that we all got that said something like it's like that beast from the horror movies that you shoot with 100 bullets and it still keeps going, right? And that's kind of what they did when they kept moving the time slot around.
Yeah,
It kept surviving.
yeah. And
When did it become popular in Ireland?
I
Was it at the
suppose
same time?
it aired 1996 when it was debuted in the United States. It aired first in Ireland 2 years later in 1998.
Okay.
But it's sequentially on. It ran in for, I suppose, the best part of 4 years, I suppose, non-stop, and then it maybe had a sort of a break, maybe for 1-2 years before. Then it got repeated on different channels, in terms of, because the UK channels, Comedy Network, the digital channels here in Ireland and UK, apart from the state-owned channels, every other channel that you can watch in Ireland, you can watch in UK. So it's constantly played on the Comedy Network channel here in Ireland and the UK. It has its own time slot. I do believe it's like 6:30 p.m. UK time, but it's randomly selected episodes. They just pick an episode at random. There's no sort of coherent sort of link to it in terms of that. So when it originally released in 1998, it was played in sort of sequence.
It was played out of sequence?
It was played in sequence in 1998 when episode per episode when it aired. But since then, it's sort of out of sequence now. These days, it's just randomly selected episodes from a particular season.
Got it. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And Ian, how would you summarize the character Leon, Ian Lithgow? How would you summarize him in 2 sentences?
He is a misunderstood genius. He's a wise fool. Is what he is. He's a wise fool. That's how I always thought of him. And I suppose, Ian, it's props to you. Before we came on air, you mentioned as well that you have 1 or 2 projects in the pipeline that we might see you later on our TV screens or movie screens later on the year. Without, obviously, you can't probably give too much away in terms of disclosure, but maybe you can enlighten us, our audience, some bit on where we might see Ian Lithgow on our screens in the near future. Well, I hope so. Yeah, there was a film that was shot last year that I have watched it on my computer screen, but I'm actually going to go to the New York premiere on April 6th. And that's a film called Creep Box. It's kind of a psychological horror film, and it's directed by Patrick Beesmans, very talented director. And I hope it finds an audience. We'll see what future it has. The other one is something I just shot a few weeks ago, and that's called The Friend, and it's based on a book by Sigrid Nunez that came out a few years ago, and that stars Naomi Watts and Bill Murray, and that is one where I get to just be silly. So it was very fun to be on set, and Naomi Watts was lovely, and not sure where it is in terms of the distribution deal, but hopefully we can see it in movie theaters. That's what I'm hoping.
Yeah.
And so The Friend.
And finally, on that note, Ian Lithgow, we all know the Lithgows are friends of Ireland, and Ireland are certainly feel the Lithgows are friends, and we need to get the full family to don our shores in the Emerald Isle. So I know John has been to see us a few times, so it'll be our honour, Ian, in the next year or two, if you're ever passing by, to stop off in Ireland and check out the Emerald Isle.
I would love to be out there, where Irish eyes are smiling.
Where Irish eyes are smiling.
Never been to Ireland. Yeah.
On that note, all that's left to say is from me, Jim Conlon, to thank our special guest in this special episode of Into the Vault series, looking at the iconic series Third Rock from the Sun, which debuted in 1996. The creation of Jerry and Bonnie Tyler featured an all-star cast, including Kristen Johnston, Frank Stewart, Jane Curtin, John Lithgow, Joseph Gordon Levitt, Simba Cali, Wayne Knight, Chris Hogan, David DeLuise, Daniel Nicolette, and our special guest who played the character Leon in Third Rock from the Sun, the one and only Ian Lithgow. But all that's left to say is from me, Jim Conlon, to you, Ian Lithgow, stay safe, take care, and God bless, sir.
Thank you, Jim. Lovely chatting with you.